Hello everybody, welcome to the first history video. Today we're going to talk through a 20-mark own knowledge question, which is, was Henry VIII's lack of a male heir the main reason for reforms to the English Church in the years 1529 to 1540? And obviously 1529 is Wolsey's fall from power, and 1540 is Cromwell's fall from power. Now thank you to Curtis for letting me use his essay, and this is how to construct it. Firstly, you need to define any key terms in your essay. So as Curtis says here, there are many conflicting views surrounding the eradication of papal power in England, and I think that's a brilliant term, so I'm going to put that down there. Define any key terms. The eradication of papal power in England, that's what we mean by religious reforms. Secondly, make sure you outline the different factors that are going to be in your essay. Move that mouse out of the way slightly. So Curtis does this in quite an interesting way actually. He says Henry became engulfed in his need for money and power, and these later drove the changes. I am also not denying the role that Cromwell and Anne Boleyn played in the reforms. Now, that is quite sophisticated. You could simply say this essay is going to outline them. That would work. But in this case, I think it's nice to see a good example. So he's outlined the four factors: Anne Boleyn, Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII, power and money, as well as the lack of heir that's mentioned in the actual question title. And the most important thing, and the thing we're going to focus on, just make sure that sticks down. There we go. God, it's not very well, is it? Let's make sure they stick down. There we go. There we go. The most important thing in an essay is your line of argument, which is this last bit here, where you say, I will argue that. And that is particularly important at A2. And this is how Curtis does it. He says here, however, it is clear that the king's hunger for power, the king's need for a male heir, followed by his hunger for power, were the driving force behind the Reformation, so the religious changes. And sorry, Curtis, I appear to have broken your essay there. Driving force is another word for catalyst. So, 1, define key terms in the introduction. 2, outline your four factors. And 3, make sure you have a line of argument. This essay will put the case that. So that is the introduction. So you can see here the 3 things that you need in an essay. You need to have 1, key terms. So religious reforms, that is the Reformation, it's getting rid, eradicating papal power in England. Outline your 4 factors. This essay will consider, is a way you can start that, and then state your line of argument. It is clear that this essay will put the case that actually it was Henry's lust for power. So that is the introduction. Now, on to the main paragraph. Okay, so this is the first main paragraph that Curtis writes about, and he argues for the statement in the question, lack of a male heir. Always good to address that first. And this is how he approaches it. He says, firstly, his opening point. He says, it was the king's desire for a male heir that was the catalyst. I love that word, catalyst. I've actually said it there, and then he uses it himself there. Brilliant. For the religious changes. That is his point. And for those that often ask, what do I mean by evidence? The next bit, this bit here, this is what I mean. Just expand a little bit on that point. Prove you know more than you did in year 4, probably when you first did the Tudors. So Curtis says, Henry had longed for a son to ensure his name would be passed on. After seeing Catherine of Aragon as being unable to provide him with as such, he required an annulment. And that's just giving a little bit of extra information. And that's what I mean by evidence. That second bit there. Going on, he brings in detail. As a result, in 1533, Henry made the acts in restraint of appeals that prevented Catherine of Aragon from appealing her case to Rome. Because obviously Cranmer was getting the annulment, and without that annulment, the child that Henry knew he had with Anne Boleyn would be declared illegitimate, and he needed a legitimate heir. So you have there point, evidence, and detail. He then goes on. This is his analysis, and a really good example of a phrase here, this led to. This led to the break from Rome and gave control of the church to Henry so he would gain an annulment, remarry, and hopefully produce the much sought after male heir. It seems that such changes would not have occurred without Henry's undeniable desperation for an heir. And that's nice. Would not have without this. So without X, there would be know why. And that is Curtis's analysis, which means that is him actually explaining. Now, he has a little bit more around that, but if you follow this basic structure, you can expand on it as you go through the year. And this is the final bit. The final bit of a paragraph is a link. You link back to your line of argument, and I'll put LOA there. But, and this is the but, obviously, when you have a paragraph that you disagree with, so for example, this paragraph is about the male heir, just to remind you, and Curtis obviously doesn't think it's that. He thinks it is to do with essentially power. So he needs to challenge that, and this is what he does. So he's set up about the male heir, it's explained about why it's essential so he can get a legitimate son. That's this orange bit here we've just looked at. Then, and this is the key skill for A2, this is when you have to sustain. So to keep going, sorry Curtis, all the way through your essay, your actual main argument. So if there's a paragraph that you disagree with, you offer a counter argument when you link back to your line of argument. And this is Curtis's. Having said that, or having said this, I should say, that's a nice phrase, isn't it? Having said this, the king's evident desires for a male heir do not provide a full explanation for the changes. I cite, I let him off the spelling mistake, should be a C, sorry Curtis, the need for an heir as a mere catalyst after Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to Edward in 1537. The religious changes continued. And we did this at the start of the lesson. He closes the larger monasteries. He goes back almost to being a Catholic. Things don't stop getting that son. He's actually crazier probably. Maybe syphilis, maybe he's just got no idea what's going on. But certainly Curtis thinks it's wrong just to have the male heir issue for all the events that follow it. So he says there must have been an underlying factor that meant Henry continued, one which I believe to be his desire for money and power. So he's also got money there. And then he goes on to the issue of money and power. In the next paragraph, I'm therefore of the belief that the king's greed for power and money was the main force behind the reforms. So, to outline a paragraph like this, you need a point. I shall put that there. It was the king's desire for a male heir that was the catalyst for religious change. So let's put this over here, in fact. You need a point. You also need an evidence. Elaborate your point. Henry had longed for a son. So his name would be passed on. You then need to have detail. As a result, Henry made the act in restraint of appeals. Let's do it that way. Point, evidence, detail. He then has to explain it. So he has analysis. This led to the break from Rome and gave control of the church to Henry so that he could gain the annulment. But Curtis doesn't agree with this pedal paragraph, and that's fine. This is what he does. He links back. Having said that, the king's evident desires for a male heir did not provide a full explanation. And then the final flourish on that paragraph we've just looked at is this. As after Henry's third wife, Jane Seymour, gave birth to Edward in 1537, the religious changes continued. So this is a pedal paragraph, point, evidence, detail, analysis, linking back. But the link back, if it's a paragraph you disagree with, dismisses, so offers a counter argument to that point. I hope that helps. I'm available for weddings and bar mitzvahs. Cheers, bye. So despite selling myself there, that Curtis's essay was good, I thought I'd come back to his conclusion. And this is how he structures his conclusion. Overall, it's clear to see that it was not just one factor that was responsible for the Reformation. So what he's doing there, he's just summarising really his judgment. It's not really just the male heir. He then goes on to say, but ultimately, Thomas Cromwell and Anne Boleyn were always overlooked by the king himself. So he's referred to his other points. He summarised what he talked about in his essay, and then he gives a justification for his judgment, this very last bit here. He says, let's move that over just a little bit there. He says, in my opinion, it was Henry's need for a male heir that was a catalyst for religious changes, as he said at the start, and he justifies this. The fact he continued after this was ratified shows there was another, or sorry, after he was gratified, shows there was another factor. Therefore, in my opinion, it was Henry's hunger for power that was the main reason for the Reformation. When the king got a taste of power, he couldn't let it go. That's quite a nice little flourish there. So he summed up his conclusion, outlined his points, and then justified his judgment. That is a brilliant essay. He didn't just smash it. He actually gets a hashtag Bosch, first one of the year. Well done, thank you.